So thank you all for joining us today. It's a great honor and a privilege to be moderating a panel with you three. I confessed to Umar, who invited me to moderate, that this is my first time moderating, so you guys are going to have to bear with me as I learn to ask the questions rather than answer them. But very briefly, we're going to do a quick round of introductions. I've received your bio, so I'm going to read them out if you don't mind. Sitting to my right is Monica Engel. Monica is an investor and entrepreneur, having launched a number of investment vehicles and products aimed at broadening financial inclusion in Silicon Valley, Maryland, Cape Town, South Africa, Mexico, etc. She is the founding managing director of Aklon Frontier Investment Group and the predecessor to Quona Capital. Monica holds an MBA and Master's in Education from the best university in the world, Stanford University, and a BA in Economics, and a BA in Economics from Williams College. She serves on the boards of Khazna, Wasoko, Twinco, and Verto, and she is the founding member of the GPCA Impact Council. So thank you for joining us, Monica. To the far end of the seating is David Zhang. David of Matrix Partners in China is a leader in early stage investing in the Chinese market, targeting companies in TMT, healthcare, internet, and mobile. David and his team have been part of the creation of growth of many influential businesses, including EachNet, Focus Media, Bona, Edan, and 21VNet. Prior to Matrix, David was a managing partner at W.I. Harper Group, and he holds a Master in Science and Biotechnology from a very good school, Northwestern University. So thank you, David.
Thank you.
And then last but not least, Steve Drobny. Steve has over 3 decades of global macro and alternative investment experience and is the author of 2 critically acclaimed books on global macro investing, Inside the House of Money, Top Hedge Fund Traders on Profiting in the Global Markets, and The Invisible Hands, Top Hedge Fund Traders on Bubbles, Crashes, and Real Money. So prior to Clocktower Group in 2007, Steve built macro research business and previously worked for Deutsche Bank in London, Zurich, and Singapore. And he has a master's degree from London School of Economics and Political Science and a bachelor's from Bucknell University. So thank you all for joining us. I'm very, very privileged to be moderating this panel with you. I want to start with a question for Steve. So Steve recently mentioned he has a fun party trick that he enjoys lobbing around at dinners around the world these days. Steve, why don't you tell us about that?
Thank you, Hisham, and thank you, Raed Ventures, for having me. My first trip to the kingdom was in 2017 for the first Davos in the desert, Hisham. And after that, in Malibu, California, we had these wildfires, we had a pandemic, and I didn't make it back until a friend of mine convinced me to come last year, and I've been a couple of times since. And it's just like mind-blowing, the change and the energy. And so my dinner party trick is to say, what is the happiest country on earth? And I live in California. People will say Sweden, Copenhagen, they'll say Bhutan, they'll say Costa Rica, and I'll say, no, it's Saudi Arabia. And they think I'm crazy. And I know you have to get there. It's just unbelievable, the energy and enthusiasm and excitement here. It's really exciting to be here, and thanks for this.
Of course. No, I totally agree with you. It's difficult to match the happiness of the kingdom. Moving to David. David, can you tell us a little bit about kind of your experience investing in, I believe, over 800 companies in the seed stage throughout your career in China and throughout, and what do you look for exactly when you're assessing these deals that you're looking at the earliest stages?
Sure. So I'm here on behalf with an invitation by Steve. This is my second time to the kingdom. The first time was only about a month ago. I was here for the Dakar Rally, participating with the Chinese motorcycle team. It was a fantastic experience for me to see the country, and I'm back again after a month or so. So I've been operating in China since 2008. We manage right now about 10 billion US. Just been entirely focused on investing in China for the past 16 years. Initially, we made our name in mobile internet. A lot of stuff that's happening now in Saudi Arabia, with the app, with the mobile, is with fintech innovation. It's exactly the path that China took to get to where it is today. We were the earliest investor in Ele.me, which is the home delivery, Didi, which is the Uber, and so on. Starting 2017, we kind of shifted along with the national strategy, basically shifted entirely into technology and EV. So we're the only investor, we were the only early investor in both Li Auto and Xiaopeng. Both are NASDAQ listed company. One I think around 50 billion, another is around 10 billion. So among these, I think basically, our recipe is look for large market, very driven founder. And I actually prefer founder than founders, meaning that any startup has to be a clear number one founder. And when they're equal, and when they are almost impossible to replace in China, sometimes a equal of 2 or 3 actually make things more complicated. So we want a clear leader and then a strong team around him. So the third thing is basically, how quickly it iterate, and then how quickly the founder could grow. A lot of people, they kind of reach their ceiling and they stop growing. And if they stop growing, then the company stop growing. Anyway, so China is sort of at the crossroad right now. It's very complicated, but I'll stop here for now. If you have any more sensitive questions, I'll answer.
Yeah, I feel like Steve has a follow-up. Steve.
Well, so we invest across public and private markets. We have an office and team in China. We're probably the last Americans left in China. Everyone's fled. And coming to Saudi Arabia, all the Chinese want to come here, but real cultural difference between the Chinese and the Saudis, where the Saudis want to have a relationship and the Chinese want to do deals. So today, about a dozen prominent Chinese in Saudi Arabia. David, of them. Here we are.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm not here for fundraising. We're not fundraising anytime soon. Yeah, so.
Okay, good. I'm going to try to get you an extra mic for Steve if we can. But in the meantime,
David doesn't like to talk. He doesn't like to fundraise. He just wants to invest. So we had to drag him out of China to come here.
Okay, good. So in the meantime, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk to Monica for a second. So Monica, you've done a great job kind of building a career in investing. Last few years, you've really focused on impact as well as kind of one of the key angles. So maybe following the question that I was asking earlier to David, how have you managed to embed impact as a lens through which you look at the deals that you're assessing? And do you think that LPs around the world are valuing that more nowadays, when they're looking and assessing managers?
Thank you, and I'm just going to echo the thanks to both Raed, the stunning venue, and my excitement of being here. I think it's our trip number 5, and I've been telling people that I've lived and worked all over the world in Mexico, South Africa, Egypt, India, and I would say single-handedly Saudi Arabia has been the greatest delta between expectations and reality. I just have been blown away, so I will just echo the gratitude to being here. And to answer your great question, Quona was founded on a belief that the markets we invest in are actually going to be the future. And our biggest markets, if you look at the proportion of our capital, we're a global emerging market fintech fund, about 800 million assets under management. 42% of our capital goes to South and Southeast Asia. It's ex-China, so it's India as the big anchor there. The next followed very closely, about 41% in LATAM, with Brazil being the big anchor, and then Mexico. And interestingly, historically, only about 20% of our capital has come to Africa and MENA. But again, and I say that as a preface because one, if you look at what's happening in Brazil and India, markets that I think are beautiful markets and real generators of some alpha, we actually think that there are other markets, and I think KSA is top of my list, that will be the next real drivers of value and innovation. So what for us excites us, maybe picking up what David said, we look for large addressable markets that are underserved. So our impact thesis is directly correlated to our alpha thesis. We believe that these markets have huge potential. They're young populations, digitally native, fast-growing, and this is the other connection between the kingdom and other successful markets, they have an enabling macro regulatory framework. So the government is creating the grounds to really breed and accelerate that innovation. So we were attracted here. Actually, like David, we didn't come to fundraise. We came because our companies brought, and actually I think Omar, my colleague from Hasna, and we have another company in India called Bureau that does KYB. They actually brought us here, and they said, you have to come look. You have to come see. And so we did, and actually I brought I was so blown away, I brought each of my co-founders with me. We've done now a few trips, because it's very hard to describe just in numbers what you see. Again, if you compare to Brazil or India, Saudi Arabia doesn't look huge, but when you start layering in the GDP and the growth trends that you very well described in your opening presentation, you really see the potential. So for us, we are financial first. We have institutional LPs, people like Goldman Sachs and Partners Groups. I mean, they will accept nothing but a market rate return. And so we have to believe that the companies we invest in are going to deliver that return. But every one of our companies is having a profound impact, radically improving access and quality of financial services to the unbanked. So for us, it's an and, not an or. And I'm happy to talk about any of them next.
That's super insightful. Thank you so much for shedding that light, and thank you, Umar, for bringing Monica and her colleagues here. It's amazing to see the region's founders attracting these amazing investors. So, kind of double clicking on the TAM question, which you touched on, and I actually wanted to kind of circle back. Steve and David, you guys spend a lot of time in China looking at, China's, from a TAM perspective, talking about $1.5 billion plus. You're talking about rapid growth in the economy. You're talking about a huge shift from the lower middle class into the middle class, etc. What excites you about Saudi in relation to what you're seeing in the Far East? And I also mirror the same question to Monica when it comes to you. You mentioned India and Brazil. You're talking about countries with much larger kind of populations. Oftentimes, I think investors get stuck on the TAM question when they're trying to justify an investment. So, Steve, maybe you can start.
I'll go first, and I'll tee you up, David. So I'm from the United States. Everyone knows we have an election this year. We have two 80-year-olds trying to out-hate China each other. And if you read the news in the U.S. and you believed it, you would think that China had fallen off the edge of the earth. So last fall, we took 12 institutional investors, Canadian pensions, sovereign wealth funds, U.S. endowments to China. And every meeting we had, they couldn't believe that we were there. They were like, why are you guys here? We haven't seen an American for 4 years. And China is just pivoted. And this is the opportunity here for the region, not just Saudi Arabia, but all the Middle East, is in a multipolar world where it's no longer just two superpowers, is to play the middleman or just play the leverage fulcrum. And you see it in China. China's saying, okay, US, you don't want us? We'll go to the Middle East. And again, there's a little bit of a cultural mismatch between the Chinese and the Middle East right now, and we're doing our best to fix it, and bringing David here as part of it. But I'll tell you what I saw when I was in China, when I saw you in November, is that there's 1.5 billion smart, hungry, hardworking people that are just entrepreneurial and capitalist and moving forward. And David has done that brilliantly with his business, and maybe you can explain that.
Thank you, Steve. So sitting here, I was thinking through the problems, and I'm trying to think to myself, what can I say and what can I share that will be somewhat meaningful to many of the honorable guests here. Let me kind of frame my thoughts one by one. Number one, Chinese are coming in large numbers to the kingdom. 99% of them are coming here to raise money. And of those 99%, probably many of them are not investable, whether they're funds or companies. Because they kind of think through this a little bit too naively. They just think this is a kingdom that has a lot of money. We need to raise a lot of money to develop domestically in China. They don't understand the logic of Saudi Arabia wanting to develop, wanting to diversify away from just oil, wants to bring more business into the country as part of collaboration first, and then maybe investment. So I think many of you in the future, coming weeks and months and years, will meet a lot of Chinese, just to make sure that those are meaningful meetings for you so you don't waste your time. And how do you judge whether or not these are meaningful? You just really dive deep and due diligence on whether or not the fund and the company on the particular sector, they are leading companies or leading funds. And they have something to offer to the kingdom. So this is something that I want to say first and most. Second, China is certainly not dead. I've been in China since 2003. I'm American. I moved to China in 2003 and caught the perfect wave. Now even during the COVID, 3+ years, I never moved away from China. I was basically in the trenches making investments. So my thesis, just like what Steve said, China is not over. Huge population, politically very stable, a very pragmatic government, very innovative entrepreneur, huge talent pool. So there's a lot to be said. And then also, China really sees the kingdom as a potential ally, and then a lot of potential area for collaboration. So what we both need to do is to do better due diligence, bring better companies to the kingdom, and to facilitate development in country, and then
Absolutely.
also maybe that will couple with investments from both sides.
Absolutely.
So that's one I share.
Absolutely. Monica, would you like to add anything there?
The only thing I'll add, can you all?
Yes.
Fantastic. The only thing I would add, the way we see, oh, thank you so much. Is it still okay? Everyone can hear me, right? Super. We see the kingdom sort of the way the role like Singapore has played, this idea that it has become a capital market center. So it is, for us, an entree not only into the rest of the GCC, really this idea that this becomes a place where great founders come, where founders that want to serve the region are based, but also a way that connects sub-Saharan Africa and other markets. So for us, it's actually a very, I think you used the word fulcrum, Stephen, I think that's a great word. I think it's a really a very pivotal point, and we're looking at companies specifically that not only serve KSA, but actually provide services for the region.
Super. So I'm getting the signals that we're running almost out of time, but I want to allow a little bit of Q&A from the audience. I understand that Seth has a couple of questions. So Seth, please.
Sure. I understand that I have questions. Wael just walked over and said, "You have a question, could you please be the first person to ask it?" So now I'm trying to think about what that is.
Yeah. Now you know what it's like being a portfolio company.
Actually, let's talk about this. The panel's about, this has been super interesting, by the way, thank you all. I do have some ideas because I was going to moderate it at one point. But the panel's about trends in global VC, and I think one of the big trends that we're seeing specific to KSA is that global venture is down, especially venture in the United States. That's not true in the kingdom, right? Venture is actually up. And so I'm just curious in terms of what you guys are seeing, maybe in other markets as contrasted to in the kingdom, and sort of where and how are you focusing your efforts? Monica, I'm thinking specifically of you because of the different markets that you invest in, but also David as well. Investments in China are down quite a bit in terms of just totals, right? And then Steve, I know you invest all over the place. Investments in the US are down a lot. That obviously creates opportunities. I'm just curious how each of you see that.
Sure, I'll start.
Yeah,
So for us, the kingdom has the three core things we look for any market that we target. Number one, phenomenal entrepreneurs. Really, number two, sophisticated co-investors. We believe venture is a discipline. There are a lot of markets where we work where it's just sort of people with money going in versus understanding what has bred success. And I think we have some great brand names here on the stage about what has driven success in the past. And number three, the macro regulatory environment. I can't say enough about that because to have especially in fintech where we work, that's a regulated business for the most part. And you really need to understand how to create rules of the game that, one, establish prudential regulation, but also are a catalyst. And I think KSA has all of it.
Totally agree. David?
Yeah, so I think China's investment sector actually shrinking. It's actually times 0.2 right now. It's shrinking rapidly. I think there's a clear flight to quality in terms of capital. So only the top tier firms in VC, in growth and late stage are still able to raise money. But it actually makes it easier for these top tier firms to make better investments because there are just lesser bubble, lesser competition. Our investment strategy basically are focusing on all the sectors are in same frequency with the government. And those are new energy, EV, automation, robotics, advanced manufacturing, a lot of areas that probably have a lot of synergy, potential synergy with the kingdom, and where the kingdom's economy is planning to go. So I think going forward, there will probably be a lot of collaboration. And I want to stress again, with leading companies, leading Chinese company in those sectors, collaborating with the kingdom across different areas. And I think by being here and also going back, I will probably also let many of the Chinese companies know that coming here just thinking of trying to get money from the kingdom, it's a fruitless effort. They need to, we all need to come up with really solid foundational collaboration strategies, and then bring real value to both sides for this to work.
The other thing I think is that everyone thinks that U.S. endowments are the smart money. We call them the dumb money. People who run Stanford Endowment, Harvard Endowment, Yale Endowment, they all think that they're brilliant, but all they do is over-allocate to private markets and over-commit, and they're all stuck right now. The U.S. pensions copy them, the Canadian pensions copy them. And really the moment here is at a moment where there's incredible innovation, and it's a global world, and someone in the earlier panel mentioned how COVID made us all super dependent on tech. The U.S. investors are retrenching, and that is a real opportunity here in the Kingdom of the Middle East. And the trend I'm seeing as I go around is in Saudi Arabia, they say, if you want our money, you invest here. Abu Dhabi says, if you want our money, you set up here. Qatar says, if you want our money, you set up here. And so there is a lot of money, but it's you have to be careful how you approach it. But the opportunity for the kingdom is that as China's retrenching, as the U.S. is retrenching, as investors are realizing they drank too much at the party last night, it's the opportunity to step in and fill that gap.
Couldn't have said it better. Beautiful contributions. Thank you all for being with us today and for enlightening us, and enjoy the rest of your time in Saudi, and looking forward to hopefully one last thing.
I think, as the Western world is abandoning China right now, what I want to say as a parting remark is seeing is believing. If any of you, really want to see what's going on the ground in China across these sectors, our firm is 150 people. We have the resources and we have the connection to arrange any meetings with any companies across any sectors. Amazing. You could find me through Steve, if needed. Yeah. Good. Again, we're not
open-ended invitation to visit China. So thank you so much for that. That's amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.